Whiskey Thoughts is the part of the show where we each take a shot of whiskey, we bare our soul, and we'll let you in on the MMA-related thoughts of two degenerates. That is us, the Whiskey of the Week. This week is still Legacy. Hopefully we're almost done with it. It's a little bit of a rough one. We video our Whiskey Thoughts each week. We post them on our Instagram at the Simply MMA podcast and on our YouTube channel as well. If you want, video yourself taking a whiskey shot, giving your own whiskey thought, and we will share it. DM it. Oh, yeah. DM it to us. We'll share it. Manny, what is your whiskey thought?
Mine is, we always listen to MMA podcasts. We listen to all the pundits, the experts. But I'm starting to feel like I shouldn't trust them. There's been so many examples, but I'm going to pick 3. Dana White saying he's going to bet $1 million or $2 million on Askren. Turns out he didn't bet a cent because he's lying. He knew what was going to happen. He's no fool. Or at least he didn't have the confidence that he said he did on Mike Tyson's podcast. Freddie Roach said that he didn't like to watch Jake Paul's boxing because he felt like it wasn't boxing at all. Said that Ben Askren showed up to Wildcard Boxing there in California in tremendous shape. Said that he was picking up everything, sparred the first day, looked great. Made huge strides in the week he was there.
He looked terrible.
Showed up in tremendous shape. He really said that. And you saw his body. That person is not in tremendous shape. I don't give a hell what anybody says. That person, not in tremendous shape.
He's never looked good, but he looked worse than he's ever looked, I feel like.
And then Chael Sonnen very seriously said he stakes his reputation, would bet his mortgage, which I'm sure he didn't. But he was so gung-ho about the fact that Ben Askren was going to win. It's no problem to make a prediction and be wrong, right? Someone has to win, someone has to lose. We do it all the time. But to try to convince people to part ways with their money and try to convince them that something's going to happen when it simply is not going to. He calls Ben Askren a world-class athlete. He hasn't been a world-class athlete for a long time. Yeah. So all these experts that are just going on and on and on about this and that when it came to that Triller event in the Askren and Jake Paul fight, it just wasn't true, man. They didn't put their money on it. They made points that are just, I think a lot of it's ego based, right? They don't want to admit, and I get it, but they don't want to admit to themselves that something they've worked so hard and long for and dedicated everything for. A YouTuber with a couple years of boxing experience can beat someone as highly decorated in MMA and wrestling as someone like Ben Askren. It's a tough pill to swallow for everybody. It's like, on paper, there's no way Jake Paul should be able to beat him. So it's like an ego thing. They can't admit that someone with just barely any experience can beat, someone that's been doing it for so long. But come on, you guys got to do better. Give us the truth. Give us what you really think. I know you have a fight to sell, but at some point it gets ridiculous when you say one guy can't box, the other guy's in tremendous shape, and then the guy that can't box knocks out Ben Askren in a minute.
I know. They even started to have me going.
Initially, that's what I'm saying. I started to be like, oh, man.
Initially, I'm like, well, he's going to knock out Askren.
I guess it's not really a fight. Chael's right. It's a competition, and Ben's a competitor. Maybe. No. Yeah. Like you said, you were pretty faithful to the Jake Paul winning aspect of it. So I give you credit for that. Because at the end of the day, it is a fight. It's punches. And one can do it and one can't.
A lot of times, kind of just go with your first, like, oh, that's what's going to happen. It's rare that it's a switcheroo.
But when Freddie Roach starts talking like that, I'm like, oh, he has to be right. Yeah. How could he, You
start convincing you. My whiskey thought this week was a tweet or, Instagram post by Drakkar Klose, who was supposed to fight this past weekend against Jeremy Stephens. Of course, Jeremy Stephens pushed him in the face-offs, and he wrote, after I was pushed by Jeremy Stephens at UFC face-offs, I immediately felt my hand go numb and neck tighten up. Sean Shelby and the UFC officials sent me to the PI to get worked on by the UFC PT staff for 2 hours. I spent the night eating, rehydrating, stretching, and even saw the PT staff later that night. I woke up early this morning with a migraine, a headache, nausea, and the only thing that made me feel better was laying in the dark. UFC got me medicine, and I rested for a couple hours before getting up and vomiting. It was at that point that we called the UFC doctor, and he made the decision to send me to the hospital. He says, I'm sorry, everyone. The fight was canceled. How hard did Jeremy Stephens push this guy?
Well, you're kind of bearing the lead. He said that he had a concussion and a cervical sprain.
Yeah, which isn't even this, but yeah. What? So,
Yeah.
and I think we were talking about this prior. He was probably dehydrated. He's relaxed. He wasn't expecting the shove, but
Who
still.
knows? And like they said on the Weighing In podcast with Big John McCarthy and Josh Thompson, that maybe his body, like they talk about the dehydration, but maybe his body was just ready to. It was pushed to the limit. Maybe it just hard training camp, and maybe it was just ready to go. And crazy man.
I've never heard of that happen.
But if you look at his body language, someone was breaking it down. You can kind of see one of his arms kind of go limp. He just kind of did look weird, as if he did suffer something.
Yeah, and he's relaxed, and you see the shove, and you see him take the whole brunt of it. So
yeah, and you saw that fight, his last fight against Beneil Darius. Drakkar Klose ain't no punk. You know what I mean? So something must have really went wrong. But yeah, crazy. And I was excited for that fight more than any fight on the card besides the Whitaker one.
That was our side wager.
Yeah, that's insane.